It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Hey, this is part 3 of my 3-part series on ImageQuest LLC, that IT services company. You know the one that Milton Bartley heads up with his team in Nashville, Tennessee. Well, you know, I had Milton on and he talked about his revenue streams. He talked about the size of his accounts. Very interesting story. Last Thursday, I had Jay Mallory, the Director of Business Development. Well, today I have a special guest. I really like this guy, and he's part of the team down there in Nashville. And Matthew Moses heads up all the projects for ImageQuest. Matthew, how are you doing, man?
Great, as always. Thanks, Ray.
Well, Matthew, it's great having you on the end of the day with Ray because, you know, I was on a webinar recently, and I just thought of you. I'm sitting there listening to this so-called consultant telling our friends in the Document Imaging channel, a place, by the way, that Matt came from. He worked for a dealer. He was in the service department. He understands our business. But they were telling our dealer friends that IT services was so similar to delivering print services that, you know, you guys are really positioned to do it. And I just thought, I remember you telling me one time, this has nothing to do with print. It's totally opposite of print. And this is a whole lot more complicated. But it can be delivered. It can be delivered profitably. So how are you doing? Tell us a little bit about your trek in ImageQuest. What's your career track? Because I just told everybody you came out of the print sector. How did you become this project manager for one of the most successful IT companies?
Well, how I did that was a lot of changes and a lot of growth at ImageQuest. Basically, I used to work for a copier company, like I said. I was one of their lead production techs. Specializing on Ricoh and Canon production print. Milton, who had a copier side of the house at that time, needed a strong production technician, so he offered me a job, a role, and I really liked the company. I liked Milton, of course, personally, and I jumped ship, came over to Milton. After a few days, I kind of went to Milton. I was like, you need some help. There's a lot of problems in the service department. He asked me, well, what are they? And I told him, and he's like, well, can you do a better job? And I was like, of course I can. And he said, okay, well, why don't you be the service manager? And I became the service manager. Shook his hand, walked out of his office. Then the next thing was, well, it's time to figure out how to be a service manager because I've never been one before. The day-to-day, the technology part, the fixing the copier, of course, I was all on. Ray came on board a little bit after that. He really helped me a lot with the processes and the how the admin side and actual how a service department runs on the back end because I didn't have any experience with that. So after a while, me and Ray started doing good. We made a lot of good changes out there. Things were very positive. So Milton came up to me and asked me, what do you think about managing IT? Help me out on that side of the house and the day-to-day operations. And so I said, of course I can do it, no problem. Shook his hand, left his office, then thought to myself, okay, time to figure out how to do IT. And what I did discover was I was not the right fit for that job. I did not have enough experience with IT yet. I didn't have enough understanding of what that deliverable was. I could manage day to day, I could take care of our customer, and I could take care of our people, but I couldn't grow. I couldn't grow the department. I couldn't make the positive changes that Milton needed. Luckily, we had a lot of talent that I was managing, which I had no business managing. So they were all brought up and they were given the correct roles and put in the correct positions. And this is, for everybody watching, this is one of those funny type stories where after all this is going on, I got Ray comes into my office and is like, all right, well, me and Milton want to have a meeting with you. So get with us before you leave today. Well, it's Friday at 4:30, and the only two people that are higher on the org chart than I am wants to have a meeting with me. So I'm not going to lie, I thought that meeting was not going to go well. But I went in there, and Ray and Milton said, hey, we got an idea of how we can fix a lot of the processes here, is we need somebody focused on project management, IT projects. Can you do that? And I said, of course I can, don't worry about it. Shook their hand, left, and was like, all right, well, it's time to figure out how to be a project manager. And that was the right role for me. I finally got my fit. I was right where I needed to be. And 4 years later, that's what I'm doing, is being a project manager. I actually raised the when I pitched my, when I went to got my CAPM and took the test, and I came back and actually gave Ray the pitch for what I think we needed to do to build a project management department for ImageQuest.
Well, I think that was one of the better decisions me and Milton made in life. You know, first one was getting that help desk in-house. And then the next one was, making Matt that project manager, sending him to school, and you've been doing great with that. And when you look at the copier industry and a project in the copier industry, they're delivering 100 machines to a campus, a college, or an enterprise, whatever it is. And maybe they're putting a production machine inside the print shop of that company. But, at the end of the day, they just throw bodies at it. They don't really pay attention to the cost of the human capital. And part of the project work with an IT services company, you really have to pay attention to the details of that human capital. And I know that ImageQuest does deals even outside the state of Nashville. I know you got some stuff in Louisville as an example, which is closer, but you also have accounts in Florida. So Matt, can you tell us how ImageQuest, an IT services company in Nashville that sells the full stack, how do you possibly manage an account in Florida?
Well, it's obviously being prepared, doing your research, making sure that you have all the information ahead of time. But it's a lot of back-end work. The being successful on the deliverable is all about how you take care of your people and providing that deliverable. So all the choices that we've made growing over the last couple of years with standardization, making sure we have the right support, the right vendors, and we're utilizing the right platforms to provide that and to have the correct deliverable to even get in the first place before we go down there is key. Second is being able to manage your resources correctly when it comes to deploying that. There is such a broad amount of skill sets and broad amount of players when it comes to IT versus a copier deliverable, when it comes to an IT deliverable, that you have to have the right people performing the right functions, and that's all they're doing. You do not have a server admin or a high-end technician doing tier 1, tier 2 support, and you don't have a hardware tech getting drugged down, spending 6 hours on an issue that a server admin could have fixed in 30 minutes. It's understanding how that dynamic and how that team plays together and gel, have the right people. It's no different than a sports team when you go out there. You got to have the right person as quarterback, the right person as linebacker, the right person as a safety. Everything has to go in play, and then the play has to be played out. That's why you have a coach, project manager, leadership, if it doesn't involve direct support for me, that can call the plays. You have the right people that that once those plays are called, that you then get to step back and let your team do what they need to do. But that is how you deliver out of state, and that's how you deliver efficiently so that it doesn't eat you alive with support after the project is technically over.
How much on-site work would you have with one of your customers? Because you are a rip and replace company, I mean, you go in there and clean it all up, make sure it's to your standards. So if you do a business like, per se, this account in Florida, I know you got more than one account in Florida, but this account in Florida that you do, how do you put feet on the streets in that account when you need to have that feet on the streets?
Well, it starts off interactions, of course, remotely, and then interactions with leadership to sell it, get the right solution, and get the customer getting the right thing to begin with. Then I get pulled in, and then what we do is then we start the planning, we organize, we figure out what all needs to happen, when it needs to happen, time frames, all that. And then what we do is we decide, okay, well, they need this switch stack, they're getting desktop as a service, they're getting an email migration, and then we get all these deliverables, and then we figure out exactly how to deliver these that is the most profitable and efficient, and what team needs to do that. I assign the team, we go down there, we spend all the time on the forefront making sure everything is standardized, everything is correct, everything is set up. And then what we do then is we support remotely, because quite frankly, it's IT. Besides hardware failure, you do not need to be on site to support a customer with IT. And hardware failure can be controlled a lot by having the correct solutions in place to, one, buy time so that hardware failure doesn't become an emergency. So you can coordinate and be efficient, but at the same time be controlled with how you fix those issues with hardware failure. But if you maintain the environment itself, you maintain the health of the computers through updates and agents and protection, and then security on the back end, then hopefully that the next big interaction you have is either A, the customer themselves need a new solution to grow, and we're going to provide that for them, and we start growing that business that way as we start now are bringing on new types of business and new roles and new things for the customer. Should be our next big interactions until they need a hardware refresh or a complete change of infrastructure. And then we come in involved. But the day-to-day should be done remotely.
Well, it's amazing. You know, there's a lot of complexity to it, but with a plan, like any complexity, you know, plans kind of unwind that complexity and make it something you can actually accomplish. It sounds like you're doing a fantastic job there, Matt, and I wish you all the luck in your continued career. It was an honor to be able to work with you. The time that I spent with you, had a great time down there in Nashville. You know, learned a lot from you. I'm sure you learned some stuff from Milton, me, and everybody learns from everybody. But you know, you guys are doing a knock it out of the park job, and it was great to be able to highlight what ImageQuest is doing. Is there anything you want to share before we end?
No. I mean, thank you for having me on, Ray. I miss you, man. It was a great time too. It was Ray and Milton were basically the people who taught me how to be a manager and a leader. I was just a normal tech, and when I first got here, and then thanks to their abilities, their skill set, and them mentoring me, and also to taking chances on me, you know, and believing me when I could do it, even though I had no idea how to do it. I had to figure that out later. I'm where I am now, and I'll be grateful to you guys. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, I would tell you this, Matt, there's nothing normal about you, and that was an easy decision for both me and Milton, I assure you. You had the skill set, you had the passion. You know, it's just a matter of training and enhancing those skills. And you did it, and you continue to do that, and that's what we all have to do as we go forward. Matthew, there's one thing everybody knows, and everybody down there in Nashville knows too. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and we'll see y'all tomorrow.